Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst for 21st December 2024, where we will be understanding 7 most important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express for UPSC CAC examinations. Now, in our first part, where we'll be taking up 2 articles for analysis. The first article is on the recent decrease in productivity of our Indian Parliament and what are the various suggestive way forward for the country. In the next one, we will be looking at how global crises are connected and highly dependent upon each other, such as climate change, water use, land use changes, and so on. This is in relation to a recent report. In the next part of our discussion, we'll be trying to understand 5 more articles in the simplified section, which are highly important for the upcoming prelims 2025 examination. So stay tuned. In today's editorial in the Hindu, according to the same, the first winter session of 18th Lok Sabha ended on December 20 as one of the least productive and most acrimonious in the history, right? So this is what we have to look into in context with reference to the productivity of the Indian Parliament. And this is a very important topic when it pertains to our prelims and GS2 portions of the syllabus. When we talk about the prelims, it is highly important to know about how the parliament functions, and also with reference to GS2, UPSC will be time and again asking you as to how the status and the health of the Indian democracy is, and that is where we will be trying to understand this article in greater detail. So let us start with what do you mean by parliament productivity? We know that in any democracy, the main power rests with the people of the country. That is why in the preamble also, we have this phrase known as we the people of India, right? So that is where the power is coming from. We know that the country goes to elections at regular intervals, during which we select our MPs and MLAs and also the various representatives pertaining to political representatives at the local level too. And within the same, we understand our representatives, they go to their respective houses. For example, the MPs goes to the parliament, right, where we have the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. The MLAs goes to the state legislative assembly, where they function as people representatives. They represent our voices. They comes with various bills and legislations. Also the oppositions comes with various criticism, having a check on the executive. So these are all the functions that they do on our behalf, because we cannot, right, go to the parliament every day, because we have our own lives, we have our own things to care of. So that is why we have appointed some people, we have elected them to do the particular job. But according to various media reports, as you can see, right, so we can see that due to various disruptions, parliamentary productivity has been killed, correct? And also, if you can see here, according to this news article, 11 out of 20 days of the winter session saw productivity of less than 6% in the Lok Sabha. That is very abysmal. Also, when we talk about, say, the statements coming from our Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister, right, the winter session productivity was very low. Only 7 bills passed in 26 days. Also, when we talk about the various causes of the same, it is generally due to various political differences. And also, when we talk about the same, we have to reflect upon right now, what do you mean by the term parliament productivity? It is the amount of legislative effort that our representatives have spent in the active session or in the current session of our legislature. And that can be our Lok Sabha, that can be our state legislative assembly, right? It is also pertaining to the Rajya Sabha too. Now, what are the various factors for the same? Firstly, how many number of sittings did it occur? What was actually the length of each sitting, or say how much number of days, right? Next, how many numbers of members of parliament or legislative assembly were present at that particular session in each of the particular days? Then, what is the level of disruption? What is the degree of disruption? Did the debates go on progressively? Did the bills were debated and discussed effectively in the parliament, or where there were too much sloganeering, there were too much of shouting, there were too much of ruckus, due to which this entire legislative work did not able to see the light of the day. So that is what we mean by parliament productivity. And when we talk about the decline of parliament productivity in the country in recent years, we will be taking up several data which are very important for your mains answers. So do not forget to make notes of this. Just have the crux of the things that we are discussing here in your class notes, in your personal notes. Firstly, when we look at the very first reason for which we see decline in parliament productivity, is that parliament function for about half of its scheduled time. Now, it is not necessary for all of you to remember the exact percentages that they are functioning between, say, each of the days during the various weeks of the present session, but note it down that parliament function for half of its scheduled time. For example, say the parliament were to debate, were to sit down, discuss the various laws, bills, and whatever that is of national importance of the parliament. For example, it was to be discussed for 100 hours. Effectively, they functioned less than 50 hours in this particular manner. Right? Just for a particular example. Next, when we talk about the legislation business, we know that one of the most important tasks for the parliament of any country, right, including our own, is to frame legislation, to deliberate on that, to suggest changes, to discuss, debate, and so on. But we have to understand only one bill has been passed in the first 6 months, right, of this present term of the government, right? So with reference to the 18th Lok Sabha, which is ongoing right now, so the only one bill has been passed as of now, which is the lowest in the last 6 Lok Sabha terms, as you can see here, 13th, 14th, 15th to 18th. We understand that number of bills which were introduced were around 38, 30, 32 in the recent past. But when we talk about our bills which has been passed, it is only one currently, right, which was actually around 42 in the last Lok Sabha. Correct. And also when we talk about the various bills, right, these bills are also not being referred regularly to the various committees. Now we know that parliamentary committees are extremely important when we talk about the scrutiny of that bill, right, when we talk about the debates of the bill, when we talk about expert opinions to be included in the bill, when we talk about also incorporating the public opinion of the with reference to the particular bill, because in these committees the opposition members are also present. So this is where we understand that not only bills are not being passed as of now, also bills are not being referred to the various committees which are very important, right? So during 18 Lok Sabha, 15 bills have been introduced and only 3 have been referred to the committees, as we can see here. Next, this was the second issue. The third issue is the declining use of the questionnaire. We know that this is a very important tool at the behest of our MPs and the MLAs to use the questionnaire to bring accountability of the executive in front of the entire nation. So that is where we can understand questionnaire function for 44% of the time in Lok Sabha and only 21% in the Rajya Sabha. And also, as you can see the trend here, right, the trend is, you can see it is way below the historical trend which existed earlier. Next, notices have been given for the removal of the vice president recently, which suggests a declining in the trust of this constitutional post, which is also concerning. And also, apart from this, a recent notice for the High Court judge has also been witnessed as of now. Now in the comment section, can you let me know which High Court we are talking about with reference to this judge and what were the various charges, because we discussed some of this in the previous analyst sessions also. Now, with reference to this, I want to give you some brief prelims information, because there were also resolutions for the removal of Lok Sabha Speaker and also motions for impeachment of judges in the Parliament. Now, we have to understand if at all these motions were fruitful in the past or not. So, as of now, we've seen that against the Speaker, Lok Sabha Speaker, we have had resolutions in 1954, 66 and 87. The names are also very important, because sometimes in prelims it has been seen UPSC will be asking you some names with reference to some prominent events that took place in the parliament of our country. So in the case of Speaker, with reference to G.V. Mavalankar, Hukum Singh, Balram Jakhar, against which resolutions were passed to remove the same, they were not being successful, right? So as of now, there is not a single speaker who have been removed in this manner. The same case is with reference to any judge, with reference to Supreme Court judge or High Court in the country, High Court judge in the country, that in the years that we have seen so far, right, 1991 and 2011 were the 2 years during which only the impeachment motions were introduced, but they were not passed. Correct. So that is also we have to understand some of the important prelims relevance. Also, when we look at some other dimensions of this declining in the productivity of the parliament, we see that the quality of debate is also declining. How? We have seen that there have been no half an hour short duration discussion, right, in this particular session, in this particular winter session. So this means that again there is a significant gap when it comes to holding the executive accountable in these discussions, right? So these are the discussions where the ministers have to respond, right? So if we do not bring them into question, right, the accountability will be going down. Also, constitution was discussed for 33 hours in Lok Sabha plus Rajya Sabha combined, but with reference to the various questions on various issues going on, with reference to economy or with reference to various other aspects, those were not discussed with reference to half an hour or short duration discussed. Also with reference to the adjournment motions, correct, this has also we have to understand in the Lok Sabha has not been discussed in the last 10 years, right? When we talk about the 16th, 17th and 18th Lok Sabha, there have been no discussion on this. With reference to private members, businesses, or say the MPs who are not the ministers of the present government, they have also the initiative to introduce their own bill with reference to any sector of our country, right? They can introduce the same every Friday for around 2.5 hours are dedicated for this particular purpose. We have also seen with reference to Lok Sabha, with reference to Rajya Sabha, this has not been done as of now, right? As of now, as we can understand, there were many number of bills by the private members which were listed for introduction both in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, but they have not been introduced nor discussed, right? Also, when we talk about their resolutions, it is also an abysmal feat. When we talk about the deputy speaker, this is a very sad story that we have to understand. There is no deputy speaker in our country in the Lok Sabha since 2019. So this is also some worrying facts. Now, what are the various factors that are contributing to diminishing productivity in the Indian Parliament? Firstly, frequent disruptions. You have to understand that the disruptions with reference to say raucous, the chaos, the various allegations which are overstretched in our parliament have been declining the productivity of the same, right? There have been various cases of walkouts, suspension of our MPs due to this particular impact. And also, as we have seen in the last Lok Sabha, that is the 17th Lok Sabha, there have been suspensions of prominent MPs. Can you let me know in the comment who were they? And that is why we have to understand they decline the quality of debates in the our forum. Next, there are anti-defection measures in the parliament as of now. In the comment section, you let me know what is the schedule of our constitution that is pertaining to our anti-defection measures. If you know the same, you also should know that anti-defection measures also decline the productivity. How? Because various political parties, right, have their own lines of various debates of various issues which the MPs and the MLAs have to adhere to. If not, they will be facing the wrath of the whip, right? So after which they can be subjected to anti-defection penalties, due to which the MPs right now do not go outside their own party lines to criticize their own party, right? So this is what is also decreasing the individual parliamentary freedom, right? Next, weak committee culture. We can also understand that the percentage of bills referred to the committees as of the last Lok Sabha, correct, these have been going down from 15th, 16th, 17th. It is on a declining trajectory. This data is very important, right? As of now, as we can see, roughly around 15 to 20% bills are only referred to the committees for greater deliberation, which is a cause of concern. Next, there is underrepresentation of marginalized groups. While we have provisions for SCs, STs, right, communities to be represented at the, say, parliamentary level, we also understand that the representation of women in the Lok Sabha have been very, very slow. Also, when we talk about the same with reference to national legislations worldwide, right, that is comparing with Sweden, Norway, South Africa and so on, we see the percentage is very high. In India, the percentage is only abysmally low at around 15 to 16%. The same is the case with reference to 18th Lok Sabha 2. So in this matter, we also have the women's reservation bill, but that cannot be effectuated until and unless we conduct the census and also delimitize exercise. Correct? So that is also one concern. Also, the rushed passage of bills without discussion, without, say, enough deliberation in the parliament itself, let alone the parliamentary committees, is also a cause of concern. So here there are some things which we should be doing as a country going forward. Firstly, the political parties must understand that there must be constructive and consensus based politics in the country. It must be issue based. For example, if there is inflation in the country, the parliament must be welcoming the discussion on what are the causes for inflation, what can be reduced, and who are accountable for the same. So there must be a consensus based policy here. Also, when we talk about various other consensus, be it on reservations, be it on one nation one election, correct, so those debates must be based on consensus, right? For example, say if some people are against the same, they have to justify the reasons as to why they are against one nation one election, against a particular aspect, right? And based on that, the government must be having a particular policy in which they can give their own reasons and have a proper fruitful discussion. Also, with reference to the preparation of the bills, the government of the day must be assuring that the preparation does not come at the cost of speedy, say, resolution of any bills. Correct? So there must be enough time dedicated for the scrutiny by the experts. Also, capacity building of the MPs and also the MLAs at the state level are important for training them with reference to various parliamentary conventions, decency, behavior. Next, also we must be using technology in this particular matter. We must be using data analytics based on what were the effects of declining productivity in the upcoming sessions. We can also use artificial intelligence to figure out how much time we should be dedicating on a particular bill to effectively debate, or also what were the various changes and what were the various amendments that can be at the behest of the various other MLAs and MPs too. So they can have a proper digital platform have proper scrutiny of the bills, legislation, parliamentary business, and so on. Next, we must also think upon the role of the speaker, right, the presiding officer, so that post can be strengthened. And also we have understood that in the case of say various amount of disruptions, it is the speaker who can restore balance, and if the speaker is not impartial, then that speaker can cause further, say, issues in the parliament too. So there, with reference to that, we must be introducing various amounts of measures to strengthen the role of presiding officer. And we can also as public, we should be using the right to information to claim or to ascertain various information related productivity of, say, the parliament. We can also talk about increasing the diversity and representation in the country with reference to the MPs, right? We can have greater diversity, so we can have greater voice represented in the same. And finally, right, you all are youth, right? You all should be also be engaged in political knowledge, be it the political news in the newspaper. Do not say have this blanket statement that I will not read any political news because they are not important for our examination. Do read them. Do try to analyze what are the, say, political scenario in your home state, and what can be the better way forward. So it is not a clarion call to join politics, but it is a clarion call to be informed as to what are the recent changes which are going on, right? So this will be making you a better and well informed citizen to
have your MPs and MLAs be accountable to you at the end of the day. So in the same respect, we have a 2021 mains question. So the question is, to your extent, in your view, right, to what extent in your view the parliament is able to ensure accountability of the executive in India? So with reference to this, we can have an introduction that the recent winter session demonstrated the urgent need for restoration of parliamentary norms and basic decency in exchanges between political opponents, because this is leading to declining parliamentary productivity, which is leading to decline in, say, the ascertaining the accountability of the executive in the country. So with reference to these, you can frame the body with reference to which data we used. Also with reference to conclusion, use a proper and balanced conclusion for the importance of parliament as a temple of democracy. With reference to this, let's move on to the next topic. Climate change, food insecurity, biodiversity loss, water scarcity, and health risk. Remember these 5 terms, because these 5 terms have been highlighted as 5 of the most important global crises, correct, according to the Nexus report published by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. A very important, say, research organization when it comes to the biodiversity in the world. Now, this is a very important aspect for prelims examination, where we have to look at various topics of environment and ecology, also with reference to GS3, conservation, environmental pollution, and degradation. This is a very interesting article. So firstly, we'll be trying to understand what do you mean by this intergovernmental science policy platform on biodiversity and ecosystem services. This is an independent intergovernmental body, as we can understand. So based on this, we have various research institutions, we have various countries, we have various private institutions which are part of this body, right? So what they do? They do not produce any new science, they do not produce any new ideas, new technology to progress the climate change aspirations. They do not do that. What they do, they have various representatives of academia experts, research experts in the biodiversity field, in the environmental ecology fields. So they do what? They deliberate, they come together at a place, right? The headquarters of the same is at Bonn, Germany. So they assemble here and they have to undertake various research and development with reference to what are the ongoing issues in the biodiversity scenario of the entire world. We have the same institution with reference to climate change in the form of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. We know that IPCC comes up with various assessments reports based on what is the status of the entire world with reference to the Paris Agreement or with reference to the various climate change agreements are, right? So what is the status of our progress regarding climate change? What are the policies we are adopting? If the particular policies are successful or not? So this is the main research that various climate activists, various climate scientists, they undertake at IPCC. The same thing happens at this particular organization, right? Among which India is also a member. Correct. So they do what? They conduct their own research. After they're conducting their own research, they also collaborate with various other environmental processes all around the world. They collaborate with the United Nations. They collaborate with the Convention on Biological Diversity. They collaborate on various other agreements. Also recently, this coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, right? They relied on the research and the various data and the various observations that emanated from this ISPPBES, correct? So this is a very important institution with reference to research in this activity. Now, what does the latest report say? Firstly, it is very important to remember these 2 data sets. The first data is talking about the various risks due to various impacts in biodiversity, which can impact $58 trillion of global GDP. So as of now, due to climate change, due to water scarcity and those 5 other things, those pose a risks of around $58 trillion of global GDP to impact them. Also, when we talk about the unaccounted for costs due to these particular effects, the costs are at least $10 to $25 trillion every year, right? So with reference to anthropological activities that change the biodiversity of a particular country, for a particular location, those particular costs are $10 to $25 trillion in a year. That is very, very serious. To understand in detail what the report is talking about, we have to talk about an example first. So imagine that there is a forest, right? There is a forest in the Amazon rainforest. So where the local farmers, they talk about cutting down the forest and converting it into farmlands. So that is a case of where we are changing the land use. Earlier the forest was there, right now we have a particular farm for agricultural activity. Now what are the various changes, what are the various impacts, what are the various interlinkages, interdependencies, cascading impacts based on this particular activity? Firstly, when we convert forest to farm, we have to understand we take up commercial agriculture there, right? We use fertilizers, we plow the soil, releasing the soil organic matter, soil carbon, right? Also we use increased amount of pesticides, we use these amounts of say genetic modified organisms, which reduces food diversity and quality. Now this same impact, if you look at this interconnection right now, for example, say unsustainable agriculture production is leading to increase in greenhouse gases. Correct? If we talk about say plowing the agricultural fields intensively, that is releasing a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere, hence greenhouse gases. Hence this is causing climate change because global warming takes place due to this. Correct? Now with reference to say other impact based on say the water aspect here. So these are the water impacts based on say, for example, increased use of fertilizers and pesticides. This leads to what? This leads to increased pollution in soils and rivers, for example, eutrophication. We also have reduced water availability for the people. For example, in the say North India, we have severe groundwater depletion due to heavy use of pesticides and various other chemicals. We have reduced water quality, water contamination. For example, in our own urban areas, we can find even traces of uranium, cadmium in the water, right? Okay, now when we talk about say the other impact here based on human health, when we talk about a forest, when we look at forest, for example, in my case, I love nature. Whenever I go to any mountains or even to my own home place, there are lots of trees which soothes my mind. I hope the same is with reference to you all. So whenever we see forest, we live among the nature, we are very connected, we are very content, not withstanding various other conflicts taking place in our lives. But when we get disconnected from the forests, or say from the green cover, from the nature, for example, in heavily populated areas such as Delhi, even in various other parts of our country, we find that the people there are disconnected from the nature. Maybe there is a small child there who have never even seen a pond in their lives, right? So that is also one case where the mental health of the people goes down due to disconnection from the nature. And when the mental health goes down, we understand it can also have overall impact on the rest of the say people also. But with reference to the physical health, be it due to air pollution, be it due to lack of good quality of water, those things also impact our health adversely. So that is why everything reduces the biodiversity of a particular area. So this is what we understand cascading impacts, because one impact is leading to the another and another is leading to the another. We also have learned about the interdependencies and the various interlinkages of these 5 things, right? So that is how we have to understand is the overall say scenario of our climate change, biodiversity, water, food, and human and animal health, right? So according to this particular article and also to this particular report, there are some transformative approaches to nature management as how we can increase the biodiversity going forward. Firstly, we have to change our lifestyle, our diets. We can move on to millets, right, which are much more say environmental friendly. We can try to also adapt vegan diet, which reduce say the consumption of meat and dairy products, which are actually the meat and dairy products are responsible for majority of the agricultural greenhouse gases because of livestock management, right? We can also change our diets according to our local conditions, correct? So these are how we have to say understand the importance of the food security aspect. Next, we have to understand the economic rationale. If we adopt nature management, we can create $10 trillion of business opportunity, right? And also this can lead to 400 million jobs, new jobs by 2030. So these are the various aspects we have to develop. Next, we should be also ensuring fair access and benefits to all sections of the population with reference to this biodiversity management, be it the local tribal population, be it the forest dwellers. They have their own traditional knowledge with reference to management of forest practices, right? So they have their own ways of conserving nature. Alongside the same, we also have extensive research and development taking place right now, so we can actually combine the two and have fair access and benefits to all of the stakeholders involved in the same. Apart from this, we also must understand and appreciate the reciprocal human-nature relationship. The human to nature relationships were also recently highlighted in the Analyst recently with reference to the sacred groves, right? So people also consider various patches of forest as, their own deities and gods and so on. So we must be understanding nature. This is the first aspect. The second aspect is also the broader health aspect, because being in close contact with the nature elevates our mood, elevates our mind. Also, we have to restore carbon-rich ecosystems such as mangroves, such as various wetlands, right? Also with reference to other parts of the world such as Siberia, we have the various permafrost regions, correct? So these are regions which are very rich in carbon dioxide, correct? So also they are taken sequester the atmospheric carbon dioxide when we talk about the mangroves and the other wetlands. So we have to effectively manage them. On the other hand, we also have to talk about finance and technology, because finance and technology is something which the Western countries are having with themselves, right? Huge amounts of money, huge amounts of technology is required to curb, say, environmental pollution, and we can have a greater amount of R&D with reference to food technology, for which we need finance. So we must be also mobilizing the same. And finally, at the end of the day, the inclusive growth approach is very important. We have to take every space of the population together going forward. With reference to this, I want to highlight some extremely important Indian government efforts with reference to all of these topics. So it is very important and highly recommended that you note all this down, and I have tried to categorize all of the same with reference to this discussion. Firstly, when we talk about the efforts India has taken with reference to climate action, right, we have the National Action Plan on Climate Change, and also the same is at the state level. Among which we have the National Solar Mission, National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency to conserve energy, and also have proper building codes, electricity codes, operated by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. We have the National Mission on Sustainable Habitat to have proper amount of urban areas which are sustainable, correct? We also have the National Water Mission and the National Green India Mission to take care of water and afforestation practices as a national plan. Apart from this, when we talk about the food security and sustainable agriculture, we have sustainable government policies. For example, the Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, soil health card, which is talking about the soil health and the various amounts of, say, nutrients present in the soil. We have the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana to promote the use of micro irrigation. We have the zero budget natural farming, which is a kind of natural farming, and also having some aspects of agroforestry. We also have the promotion of organic farming in the country, correct? So these are all the, say, aspects of promoting, say, food security and sustainable agriculture. Also, when we talk about the biodiversity conservation, we have the National Biodiversity Action Plan to talk about the broader policy in conserving wildlife in the country. Along with the same, we also have the Wildlife Protection Act, and also the Project Tiger and other similar projects such as Project Elephant to cover various keystone species and have a broader target for wildlife conservation. We also have eco-sensitive zones, part of which we will be discussing later also, right? We have more and more number of new national parks and tiger reserves which are designated right now, bringing the total protected area cover and increasing the same. We also have the National Afforestation Program. Next, when we talk about sustainable development and pollution reduction, we have the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan. We have the National Green Hydrogen Mission to generate greater amount of sustainable hydrogen using renewable sources. We also have the PME drive to promote higher adoption of electric vehicles, offering subsidies to the people. And also we have the biofuel promotion to have greater R&D, for which we have the first stage, second, third and fourth generation of biofuels, where the government right now is trying to promote more and more of second, third and most importantly fourth generation of biofuels. Apart from this, we have the various state specific measures. For example, in Delhi, we have the various policies to promote e-buses, electric driven buses, right? So these are the various aspects we have to understand. Broadly, we also have the Panchamrit, which is our own mantra of climate change, that we have to reach our non-fossil fuel energy capacity to 500 gigawatts by 2030. India will be meeting 50% of its energy requirements from the renewable energy sector by 2030. So apart from this, we have 2 and 3 other more important goals. You have to keep these things in mind to answer the mains previous year questions. And also, when we talk about the other initiatives, with regards to water resource management, we have the Namami Gange program for better conservation of the Ganga river. We have the Atal Bhujal Yojana. We have for the same of protection of groundwater. We have the Jal Jeevan Mission and Catch the Rain campaign. With reference to the various nature-based solutions and urban resilience, we have the sustainability aspects of smart cities mission and the Amrit Bharat station initiatives of the Indian Railways, which is trying to promote sustainable railways. Also, we have the National Urban Livelihoods mission to promote better amount of skills in the ecosystem, ecologically sustainable areas. With reference to this, we also have the international commitments and partnerships, the nationally determined contributions of India under the Paris Agreement, and also the recent Panchamrit, as we have seen, right? We have the India who actually pioneered the foundation of the International Solar Alliance, and with the same, we also have seen that India is also contributing actively to International Solar Alliance, which is an alliance of countries based on, say, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So countries lying between the same are part of the International Solar Alliance, where other countries are also invited to be a part of this alliance. Also, India is a part of this coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure to assist the other developing nations to have proper amount of infrastructure for disaster management. And finally, India is also part of the basic group, where we have China and some other like-minded countries for proper amount of climate goals convergence, right? Also, finally, when we look at economic and policy incentives, we have the perform achieve trade, which is a very important and crucial aspect of reducing greenhouse gases with reference to various industries, right, where credits can be generated for this kind of consumption. And finally, we also have the CAMPA. Recently, yesterday only, this was covered in the Analyst. Next, we have various national legislations, the Environmental Protection Act, the Wildlife Protection Act, right? Alongside the same, we have the National Green Tribunal, which is adjudicating various cases with reference to environmental violations. Also, finally, we have subsidies for renewable energy. For example, we have the PLI scheme for solar, PV modules, production in the country. So these are all the various efforts that government of India is trying to put in for management of the same. So here we have a mains practice question in which you can use various data as a part of your introduction. So whenever we talk about any report, we can use the data pertaining to the report directly in the introduction. Apart from this, you let me know 2-3 of your own points in the comment section as to what do you think is the various aspects and challenges that the world will be facing. With this, we're moving on to the next one. Recently, according to an RBI report, the state finances have improved from the pandemic times, because during the pandemic times, the state governments had to spend more on ground level situation management of health conditions and also the various other essential supplies. Right now, it has come down. So the same we'll be looking in this article, where we have seen that the gross fiscal deficit, correct, which was as high at 4.1% combined with reference to all of the states, correct? So that has declined to around 3.2%. Now, please do note that for our mains examination, also in our prelims examination, UPSC asks some trends of some very important economic ratios. So for that, please do remember such amount of ratios here. So that is where the RBI report is talking that the combined fiscal deficit of all the states have declined or reduced from 2020-21 levels. The main reason for which it has reduced is due to decline in the revenue expenditure or day-to-day expenditure of the state governments, right? On the other hand, we see the state governments are also increasing capital expenditure over a period of time. That is, they are trying to have better amount of infrastructure, better amount of roads, and so on. So it is good on the one hand. On the other hand, we have seen that also we see that there is an increase in the capital receipts too, correct? So therefore, the state governments have in the years have adopted the path of fiscal consolidation. That means that over a period of time, to reduce the fiscal deficit, the state governments and say the government in general is cutting down on wasteful expenditures. So three of the reasons for which the same has occurred is firstly that more of the state governments are adopting the state institutions of transformation under the Niti Aayog framework to have better amount of expert analysis and discussion with reference to the economic conditions. Next, many state governments such as Telangana, Karnataka, they are facilitating direct benefit transfers to the beneficiaries. This is reducing the leakages and the corruption within the same. Also, there is a shift towards market borrowings as of now. So this is also reflecting healthy amount of debt levels as of now. With reference to this, I want to talk about this FRBM framework, where according to this framework, the general government debt has to be 60% of GDP by 2024-25, and this is actually state plus center combined. Next, also there is a target of maintaining the fiscal deficit to 3% of GDP. Also, the formulation of fiscal strategy, with reference to various how the expenditure will be done should be made by three various important documents which would be tabled at the parliament, right? And also the same is encouraged to be present at the state legislative assemblies by the respective state governments, correct? So this is where the framework is there, but there are some concerns as of now. Firstly, the report highlights these concerns, for example, of power sector, where there is 6.5 lakh crore debt by 2022-23, correct? Also, we have to understand this number is 2.4% of our GDP, which is huge, right? So this is the debt of the power sector in all of the in various of the state governments. Apart from this, there is also sharp increase in the various subsidies due to farm loan waivers, free services such as electricity, transportation, gas, sometimes even smartphones, laptops, which the state governments are more than happy to give to the people in return for the votes. This is also causing a financial a burden, right? Because we have to understand, according to an Axis Bank report, 14 states now have an income transfer scheme for women. That is, those state governments are giving free money to the women, and this is amounting to 2 lakh crore, correct? So this is around roughly 0.6% of our GDP. So a huge amount already. And finally, there are huge number of state guarantees. For example, if a marginal section of the population has a scheme of the state government, that for example, the SC community will be entitled to get, for example, a laptop, right, free every 5 years, for example. Now, to buy this laptop, maybe this person is getting a benefit from the state government that you can take a loan, but the collateral will be given by the state government. So you do not have to worry about the collateral. You only take the loan, you buy the laptop, you pay the principal amount, right? And the interest payment, the collateral part will be taken by the state guarantee, or say it will be having the guarantee of the state government. So that those things are also increasing. That means right now progressively state governments are giving more and more financial incentives to the people, correct, with reference to this freebies culture, and also guarantee programs where these are causing financial burden, correct? So this is where we have to understand that RBI is calling for a credible roadmap for debt consolidation for the state governments. Especially the Punjab, Bihar, Kerala and the West Bengal state governments must be establishing clear, transparent and time-bound path for debt consolidation, because these free services and all of these things are mostly in these particular states. Also, states must be amending their fiscal rules, changing their fiscal rules to become more and more in sync with the ongoing shocks that the economy is prone to. Right? For example, pandemics, stock market crashes, and various other macroeconomical crashes. So what is the way forward? Firstly, private investments to less developed states can be encouraged, such as Jharkhand, such as Chhattisgarh. So we can have more and more self-independence with reference to the economic activities of the states. Also, we must be rationalizing revenue deficits, not capital receipts. We have to reduce the wasteful expenditures. We should not be selling off our PSU stocks, our say various other assets that the state government have. Next, we have to have better amount capacity building, training of state government employees with reference to the debt management have activities. Next, the states must also be empowered to increase or decrease the royalty rates on various minerals, because based on this they can attract various other business opportunities. So the power of the same right now is with the center, so center can do a progressive aspect here. Then the rationalization of centrally sponsored schemes must also be done. Why? Because we have to understand, with reference to centrally sponsored scheme, part of the expenditure has to be made by the state government, right? This is in contrast with the centrally sectored scheme, where we have say a component fully sponsored by the union government. So this is also putting heavy pressure, heavy burden on the state governments. Finally, the states must be having independent debt management cell. Each and every state must be having the same to manage the debt, to track the debt, and so on. Finally, the strengthening of the local bodies must be done to devolve more and more powers of taxation to those levels, and the 16th Finance Commission must be taking a heat of these increasing debt levels. While they have come down, but alarmingly the debt levels are still high. So we must be doing a particular aspect with reference to 16th Finance Commission with better amount of recommendations and better amount of devolution funds to the state governments. So finally, you let me know, what do you have the answer to this UPSC PYQ in the comments below. The 55th GST Council meeting will be held, which is very important from our perspective of the examination with reference to prelims and GS3, where we'll be first understanding what is the Goods and Services Tax Council all about. It is a constitutional body which is under Article 279A. Now in the comment section, can you let me know what is the Constitution Amendment Act and what is the particular year it is pertaining to, right? Also, when we talk about the GST Council, it is having the objective of rationalizing the various tax rates, of implementing GST in the country, which is an indirect tax regime. It is also tasked with resolving various disputes and actually having a proper model of cooperative federalism. It is composed of our Union Finance Minister along with Minister of State for Finance with reference to Revenue Department, right, with Revenue Budget Department. We also have the same with reference to the State Finance Ministers, right. With reference to that, the state governments can send their State Finance Ministers or any other minister, correct. So here we have the various mandates for the GST Council. So the GST Council shall be making a recommendation to the Union and States regarding what are the taxes to be subsumed under GST. So the apex power, ultimate power is with the GST Council here. What are the taxes which will be very exempted from the GST regime, for publishing various model GST law, for determining the threshold limits with reference to GST, what will be the various rates, what will be the various slabs. As of now we have 4 slabs plus 0% slab here. Next, we have the special rate for additional resources to special status for some states, where some states will be getting a greater share of resources, right, or any other matter, and also the inclusion of petroleum products, which is outside GST as of now, right. So these are the various mandates here. So these is actually how the GST will be functioning. Now, when we talk about the core functioning here, the center will be having 1/3 of the votes, the states will be having 2/3 of the votes, right, and both of them together, they have to vote on various important matters, but they have to make sure that they are attaining 75% of the cumulated weighted votes to reach any decision. So this is actually a very important strength of this institution, that we need a greater agreement between the states and the center to agree to any changes in the GST taxation regime. And also this is implementing the dual GST model with reference to central GST and the state GST, and also recommending various aspects of integrated GST and how the revenues will be shared between the various states and the center. Now, what to expect at this 55th meeting, which is going to take place? Firstly, there is an expectation of reduced say tax rates on various essential commodities such as food delivery services, insurance premiums, bicycles. Also on the other hand, we can have say an increased amounts of taxes for expensive products, ready-made garments and so on. So there can be a price-based tax differential rates. So based on the prices of the commodities, the taxes will be accordingly decided upon. Also, the council is expected to deliberate another key issue, that is the inclusion of aviation turbine fuel within the ambit of GST. Because what happens is that, for example, we have Indigo. Right now we know that Indigo operates various airlines, and for which they need aviation turbine fuel, and they have to pay various amounts of say other kinds of taxes and so on. Correct. Now if ATF is outside the GST regime, they cannot claim the various credits that they are paying on this particular aspect. So there is a greater demand of including the ATF under the GST so that they can claim the credits. Right. And also apart from this, there are some other changes too. The GST council will be also deliberating on whether we should having these 5 slabs, or we can have 2 or 3 slabs, because too many slabs create confusions when it comes to GST filing, especially for the MSMEs, right? Also, they will be deciding on the insurance premiums as to how to exempt the insurance premiums on various stakeholders, correct? So for senior citizens, health insurance and term insurance for the general people, it is expected that there will be relief in the same, correct? Next, there can be also a rate cut for food delivery systems, and also a rate hike for the used electric vehicles. And when we talk about the final say aspect here, it is about compensation cess. What is compensation cess is all about? It is about a compensation for the states to implement the GST. We know that when GST was implemented, it was a major economic reform, but it also had the potential to impact the state finances, the state revenues. Now we know that with every subsequent year, the states will have a percentage of revenue which was growing, which was in the range of 10 to 15%. That means that with every particular year, state governments saw an increase of around 10 to 15% of their revenues that is coming from the earlier taxation system. But when GST was introduced, the states complained that if you are bringing in GST, people will be confused. People will be have to file this GST on online platforms and so on. So there can be a chance of reduced revenue from my side. So center, you have to compensate me. So that is the main aspect of compensation cess, where center agreed that okay, let us create a non-lapsable fund which will never lapse, which we can levy on luxurious goods, on same goods and demerit goods, right? For example, cigarettes and expensive cars. So the proceeds of which will be going to the state governments to compensate their loss, potential loss for the GST aspect, right? So initially the GST compensation cess was envisioned for 5 years, but later it was extended. Why? To repay the interest and principal amount of around 2.69 lakh crore of loans that the government took during the COVID-19 pandemic to compensate for the revenue loss for the states, right? So this is why right now this was extended to around 2025 to 2026 March. So this is how we have to understand the recent meeting. They will be also be discussing with reference to the GST compensation cess, correct? So for some sane goods or demerit goods such as tobacco and aerated drinks, this will be discussed, and they can face a special rate of 35% in the future, right? And this is where the GST compensation cess will be already raising the prices of this kind of goods and services too. Now with reference to this, we have a PYQ from 2017. You let me know what is the answer of the same in the comments below. And also with reference to GST, we have many questions in 2020. This is one question as to what is the rationale behind the GST Compensation to States Act of 2017. How has COVID-19 impacted the GST Compensation Fund and created new federal tensions? You let me know the reason in the comments definitely. The Indian private sector is very excited to lay new undersea cables to boost India's digital connectivity. This is a very important aspect for GS prelims, general science. You can also use this recent news as a case study in your infrastructure answers that pertain to digital, say, infrastructure. Now, when we talk about undersea cables, imagine that this is a part of USA and this is a part of the Europe. Now, how do we transmit internet from this part of the continent to that other side of the continent? That is by using complex amounts of, say, undersea cables, which have a very novel engineering feat of encapsulating the very sophisticated optic, fiber optic cables beneath these various sheets of, say, very advanced materials. The sheets are laid below the sea, right, along the sea floor, almost along the sea floor to this particular continent. So this lead to better amount of internet transmission all around the world. And let me tell you, our internet mostly is being fueled by the undersea cables. Correct? We have thousands and millions of kilometers of undersea cables connecting all of the continents, due to which we can have the, say, benefit of internet, and also the video which you're seeing right now is being fueled by this technology as of now. We can have better technologies in the future, such as satellite communication internet, right, or satellite internet, where we can have direct linking of internet via satellites. But till we go to that level, which is very technologically intensive and cost intensive, we have to carry on with this particular cables. Now, two new cable systems have been set up, such as the India-Asia Express and India-Europe Express. So we are connecting with reference to various Asian countries and European countries. This is to bolster, India's defense strategy, because if we as a country have our own submarine cables with reference to internet, we can have greater amount of cyber security. We can ward off any physical damages. We can maintain the cables ourselves, because mostly due to various sea creatures, the cables are destroyed. Due to attacks by various state or non-state actors, we can have greater amount of control here. Correct? So here, these cables will be 15,000 kilometers in length, where Reliance Jio and a Chinese investor, the name of China Mobile, will be investing in the same, where the connections will be done between Chennai, Mumbai, with Singapore, Thailand and Malaysia in Asia. And with reference to Europe, it will be connecting with France, Greece, Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Djibouti. Right? Now, with reference to this, Bangladesh, there are some concerns coming up from Bangladesh, because Bangladeshi government has recently put on hold a decent connectivity that will be linking Bangladesh internet services with our Northeast India. But the same is a kind of a setback which is being seen. That is why this project can be very instrumental. Apart from this, we have also some other counterpoints where we should not be dependent on Bangladesh, because we have our own aspects here. For example, the Northeast states are already being served by fiber laid on top of the, say, Power Grid Corporation of India's transmission lines. So that is also one aspect where they can use there. So this is the entire topic which is important for our examination. This article is talking about some of the important statements passed by our ecologist Madhav Gadgil, where he has immense contributions in the field of ecology. So with reference to his statements, let us keep some of his statements as our notes, so that you can use these in your mains answers. So for our prelims also we have significance, because we have to look at the Western Ghats ecological expert panel, and for our mains we have to look at conservation. Firstly, let us talk about Western Ghats, because this is an area where Mr. Gadgil has been most prominently active in. Now, Western Ghats, if you can look at this map, and you should be looking at this map very carefully, because in the past there have been many map-based questions based on Western Ghats. So it is 1,600 kilometers long. It starts from the Tapi estuary to Kanyakumari in the south, right? So it has some of the, say, remnants till the south here. It is also part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and is one of the, say, 36 biodiversity hotspots. Also, it meets Eastern Ghats at the Nilgiri Hills here, and the highest point of the same is Anaya Modi. And Western Ghats, majority of the Western Ghat is also declared as eco-sensitive areas, which are areas rich of biodiversity but very prone to anthropological activities such as hunting, such as mining, such as agriculture, quarrying, and so on. So this is where we find that due to various anthropological activities, the extent of Western Ghat is decreasing over a period of time, due to which the government have had two expert committees for the same. Now, when we talk about this ecologically sensitive areas, as we can see, most of the Western Ghat is declared as an ecologically sensitive area. Correct? So generally this ESA are located within 10 kilometers of the protected areas of national parks, tiger reserves, wildlife sanctuaries, and they act as a transition zone from human settlements such as cities, factories and so on to mildly forested areas to those protected areas, right? And within the same, veteran ecologist Madhav Gadgil received the UN's highest environmental honor, Champions of the Earth. So we can actually note this down because we can cite them in our ethics, in our essay, whenever we want to have any important personality and showcase his or her achievements in the environmental field. Now, according to his statements, Gram Sabha and locals should be a part of the decision-making process when it comes to conservation of this ecologically sensitive area. Now, to remind all of you that Gadgil was the chairman of the Western Ghats Ecology Experts Panel, right? Now, this panel recommended that the entire stretch of the Western Ghats should be declared as an ecologically sensitive areas where the mining and quarrying activities should be immediately stopped, right? So, the region was divided into three parts: ESA, Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, and gave a broad outline of the various restrictions of those activities, correct? Also, it recommended that the determination of the areas of Zone 1 or Zone 2 or Zone 3 be done on a block or taluka level, not at the village level. Village level was recommended by the Kasturi Rangan Committee recommendation. Also, no new polluting industries, correct, were to be permitted in Zone 1 and Zone 2, and existing industries were to be phased out by 2016. So, he adopted a very strict in an ideal approach for conservation of the ecologically sensitive area in the Western Ghats, correct? But we have to understand the government later also appointed this Kasturi Rangan committee, which divided the Western Ghats into two categories: natural landscape and cultural landscape. Of the natural landscape, it picked out merely 37% as biodiversity rich, so it liberalized some of the conservation aspects, right? And it proposed at the village level, and only red category industries were completely restricted. So we can tell that this group went with a very liberal approach. Apart from this, some of his statements are also noteworthy to be noted down. So he said that the approach for decision making should be from the bottom up and not vice versa, that is top to bottom, correct? So he told that we can involve various community groups such as Kerala's Kudumbashi, which is a community network to reduce poverty in the particular area, which is also very, very famous, correct? So we can use these groups, where these groups can be given contract for rock quarries and be asked to manage them, because most of these quarries are illegal and they do not have the permission of the district collectors, right? He also accused the various tea estates there to running their operations illegally. And also he gave a very important message for us that the country needs to focus on development of four main components, that is natural capital, human capital, social capital and man-made capital. Brilliant words. So you can incorporate them in your answers, right? So we'll be moving on to the next one right now. Finally, in the last article, we'll be discussing about murder hornets and the broader concept of invasive alien species. Now here, these murder hornets, right, are of two types, right? They are known as Asian giant hornet and European hornet. So these are their original name. Their original name is not murder hornets, but they are known by that name because they have the ability to quickly colonize any beehives, and also they can totally decimate, right, even by cutting off the heads of the bees within 90 minutes and take off the entire bee colony, right? They also attack other insects, but generally they target beehives. And bees are very important pollinators, right? They help in pollinating the various crops, the various flowers, and that is why decline in the population of bee can lead to a greater ecological collapse. So that is why these invasive species, when they infiltrated the state of Washington in around 2018-19, right, the government straight away prompted and started killing off this particular bees. Correct? These are invasive species in North America, and particularly for their adverse impacts on the bees and the stings also, which can be painful and also fatal, right? They have been totally decimated as of now according to the US government. Now, why they are so much disruptful? Firstly, because we have to understand any invasive alien species are not a species of our local say area. They create a biological invasion first by interacting with native species. They kill off the native species, then they establish themselves, and finally they establish a colony within which they introduce their offspring, and they start to spread. So some of the examples here: a spiraling whitefly, woolly apple, and so on. So what are the various initiatives related to the management of invasive alien species? Firstly, we have the CBD for that. That is the Convention on Biological Diversity. Apart from that, we have also the Kunming-Montreal Biological Framework, where India has the commitment to reduce the impacts of invasive alien species by 50% by 2030. We also have the IUCN Invasive Species Specialist Group. Also, the Convention of Migratory Species of Wild Animals. Can you let me know in the comments what is the other name for this CMS? And finally, we have the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act 2022, where we have certain provisions as a formally for the very first time in India to combat invasive alien species. So with this, I thank you for being a very patient audience. Please do attempt the quiz which is following up. Till we meet again, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.